Chosen one, stop everything and sense the electric charge surging through your spirit right now. A heavenly jubilation is thundering across the realms, drawing you precisely to this moment. You didn't land on this video by chance. Heaven orchestrated your arrival with flawless timing. That striking 888 emblazoned on the thumbnail captured your attention and demanded your click, didn't it? In Scripture and Christian life, 888 signifies the infinite abundance of resurrection life in Christ, echoing Jesus' victory over death and the overflowing new beginnings promised to those who obey, just as he rose on the 8th day to launch eternity's triumph. Why are you here watching this exact message? Is your soul leaping because obedience has finally unlocked heaven's applause, revealing the authority and favor you've carried in secret? Have you felt the rush? The holy confirmation that your yes has shifted everything? Before we unveil the full celebration, if this ignites your spirit, comment 888 below, along with your city or country to proclaim, "Heaven celebrates me. I'm stepping in now." That declaration marks your territory in this worldwide victory. Like this video, subscribe to stand with the obedient chosen and share this word with another soul ready to obey. Your action fuels the fire. The celebration explodes. Enter heaven's open gates. You weren't supposed to wake up from that nightmare. You weren't supposed to rise after they betrayed you. Every time you got back up, you broke a prophecy. The enemy tried to write over your life. The enemy was confident that the abuse would scar you forever, that the abandonment would leave you too numb to trust again, that the heartbreak would shatter your voice. But they didn't count on the one who was standing behind the scenes, blocking what should have taken you out, rewriting what others tried to label you with. Hell had plans. Trauma was supposed to silence you. Addiction was supposed to chain you. Fear was supposed to blind you. The wounds were designed to deform your destiny before you could even discover it. You were meant to be another statistic, another forgotten soul with a broken future. But God interrupted every cycle with one word: mercy. There were nights you lay on your bed too exhausted to pray, too numb to cry. You weren't asking for blessings. You were just asking to survive. And heaven heard every unspoken word, every groan, every breath you didn't think would matter. You didn't have a choir behind you. You didn't have a platform. You had pain. And somehow you kept going. That's not ordinary. That's obedience under fire. The second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 8, confirms that we are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair. That's you, pressed, but not crushed, pushed, but not destroyed. That's how God keeps his chosen ones unexplainably standing after storms that should have buried them. Let's be honest. There were times you almost agreed with the enemy. You almost gave up. You almost believed the lie that it would always be this way, that the shame would never leave, that the darkness would swallow you whole. But somehow something inside you refused. You didn't know it then, but that was obedience, choosing to keep breathing, choosing to get out of bed, choosing to say, "God, I don't get it, but I won't quit." That choice echoed louder in the spirit than you know. See, the enemy didn't just attack you randomly. There was intel. There was a prophecy over your life. You don't go through that kind of pain by accident. The enemy saw the glory written over your name and tried to sabotage it before it could mature. Every lie was strategic. Every failure was weaponized. Every delay was engineered to make you question your worth. But you survived. And that survival was an act of war. Your survival was obedience in motion. God didn't keep you alive to return to who you were. He preserved you because of who you're becoming. The old you couldn't carry what's next. That version of you, the one that tolerated abuse, settled for spiritual crumbs, and lived under the approval of others, had to die. And it did, in fire, in pain, in silence. But what rose was a version of you the enemy cannot manipulate anymore. You didn't survive just to survive. You survived so obedience could become your lifestyle, not just your response to crisis. You learned how to obey God when everything was falling apart. And that's why you're dangerous now, because you don't obey for applause. You obey because you were supposed to be dead. And now you're breathing purpose. And listen to me, the darkness that almost killed you is now terrified of you. Hell remembers how hard it tried, how many nights it sent confusion, how many times it whispered, "You're worthless." And now, that same darkness watches in silence as you rise clothed in fire, marked by glory, fueled by obedience. You weren't supposed to survive, but you did. You weren't supposed to obey, but you have. And because of that, the very plans written against your bloodline are burning. You've become a threat not because of your strength, but because of your surrender. And now, heaven beholds you through entirely new eyes, not as a fragile soul battered by life's relentless storms, but as a battle-hardened warrior forged in the crucible of unwavering faith. The scars etched across your spirit are no longer badges of shame or reminders of defeat. They stand as sacred seals, indelible marks of divine approval that testify to your fierce wrestling with the forces of darkness and your triumphant choice to embrace the radiant light of God's truth. You stride forward today, cloaked in unshakable authority, not because your path was paved with ease and comfort, but precisely because obedience demanded the ultimate sacrifice, stripping away every layer of self-reliance until all that remained was your raw, surrendered yes. And in that costly surrender, you paid the full price without reservation, emerging stronger, wiser, and irrevocably transformed. This is the profound reason you now possess treasures that others in their hesitation have tragically forfeited forever. This is why the very atmosphere in a room shifts dramatically the moment your voice breaks the silence. Why conversations hush, why hearts stir, why an invisible weight of glory descends. Logically, you shouldn't even be standing here today, victorious and alive in your calling. The odds were stacked impossibly against you, the battles too fierce, the nights too dark. Yet here you are, a living miracle, breathing proof of heaven's relentless pursuit and your own resilient spirit. But before we celebrate this victory fully, there is a stark truth you must confront head-on, a reality that most people flee from in denial or fear, preferring the illusion of safety over the demand of accountability. The unvarnished truth is this: you delayed. You hesitated at critical junctures. You procrastinated on the very obedience that heaven was urgently requiring of you. And in those moments of postponement, it nearly cost you everything: your destiny, your peace, your eternal inheritance. Every single time you whispered to yourself, "Maybe later," or convinced your heart that tomorrow would be soon enough, something profoundly sacred slipped irretrievably through your fingers like sand in an hourglass. Every instance you waited for that elusive, perfect moment when conditions aligned just right and feelings cooperated fully. The grip of darkness tightened its insidious hold, coiling tighter around your potential, your promises, and your purpose. But oh, the boundless mercy of God. Yes, that extravagant, undeserved mercy stepped in time and again to intervene with grace that defies comprehension. Even as you drifted farther from the path, even while your steps faltered and your focus wavered, God never ceased reaching out to you with open arms and a steadfast voice. His tone remained unchanged, patient, loving, insistent, calling you back from the brink without condemnation. Yet in your prolonged indecision, it was your own hearing that gradually dulled your spiritual ears, growing accustomed to tuning out the divine whisper. You became numb to the gentle nudge of the Holy Spirit, desensitized to the persistent pull on your heartstrings that begged for immediate response. And still, in his infinite patience, he waited. Still, he enveloped you in protective covering, shielding you from the full consequences of your wanderings. Still, he sustained the very breath in your lungs when the spirit of rebellion lurked, ready to snatch it away in a moment of unchecked defiance. You weren't merely battling everyday distractions or minor temptations. You were teetering on the precipice of genuine spiritual peril, where the line between caution and compromise blurs into oblivion. Because there inevitably arrives a pivotal season in every believer's journey when mere delay morphs into outright defiance, when chronic indecision solidifies into deliberate disobedience that grieves the heart of God. You never intended to rebel outright. Your heart wasn't hardened in malice, but the cumulative effect of your postponements edged you perilously close to that point of no return. You kept repeating the mantra, "I'm just not ready yet," clinging to excuses rooted in fear, doubt, or self-doubt. But heaven's timeline was never contingent on your personal readiness or emotional preparedness. It hinged solely on the sincerity and timeliness of your yes, that simple yet profound act of submission. There exist sacred moments in the spiritual realm where even a brief delay carries far greater danger than an outright denial, where every fleeting second of hesitation carves out additional territory for hell to encamp scheme and sabotage. And chosen one, you were perilously positioned there, balanced on that razor-thin edge between breakthrough and breakdown. One more day of complacent waiting, one additional excuse to defer action, and you would have unwittingly stepped into a counterfeit comfort, disguised as darkness, a deceptive peace that would have sealed you off from the divine turning point, the holy intersection where heaven's plans converge with human willingness. The cost would have been catastrophic missed appointments with destiny, forfeited blessings, and a lifetime of regret echoing in the what-ifs. But then, in a glorious twist of redemption, something miraculous unfolded within your spirit. You obeyed. You uttered that life-altering yes before the window of opportunity slammed shut forever. In that decisive instant, mercy triumphed over judgment, obedience overthrew procrastination, and heaven's celebration erupted in full force, honoring the warrior who finally chose the narrow path of immediate surrender. And that yes slammed a door shut in the enemy's face. This is why it matters. Obedience isn't just about what you gain. It's about what you stop from growing. When you finally moved, it wasn't just a breakthrough for you. It was a shutdown for hell. God didn't just give you a second chance. He put a stop to the spiral. And now that you've stepped out of delay, the difference is felt in the atmosphere. But let's not forget what almost happened. Delay almost led you into the wrong covenant, the wrong relationship, the wrong career, the wrong voice speaking over your destiny. The enemy's trap wasn't always destruction. It was distraction, insidious and relentless, the kind that creeps in under the guise of everyday busyness, pulling your focus away from the divine whisper that demanded your immediate attention. And the most perilous form of this warfare is distraction, wrapped in the seductive cloak of convenience, the false comfort of scrolling mindlessly through feeds, the illusion of productivity in mundane tasks, the deceptive ease of postponing what your spirit knows must be done today. It starts small. A quick check of notifications, a fleeting thought that tomorrow will be better suited for action. A subtle rationalization that you're just gathering more information before committing. But these are not innocent pauses. They are strategic snares designed by the enemy to entangle your soul deeper into inaction. The longer you waited, allowing those moments to stretch into hours, days, and weeks, the more profoundly entangled you became in a web of your own, weaving threads of doubt, fear, and self-justification, tightening around your potential like vines choking a once vibrant tree. Each debate within your mind, weighing pros and cons, endlessly seeking one more confirmation, waiting for emotions to align perfectly, only served to numb your spiritual senses further, dulling the sharp edge of discernment that God had honed through trials and prayers. Your heart grew accustomed to the delay, mistaking stagnation for stability, and what began as a brief hesitation evolved into a habitual pattern that threatened to redefine your entire spiritual trajectory. And yet, in the midst of this self-imposed fog, grace, extravagant pursuing, unrelenting grace, found you exactly where you were, not waiting for you to clean up your act or muster perfect resolve, but breaking through the barriers you had erected with your procrastination. Chosen one, hear this with the full weight it deserves. Do not dare romanticize delay ever again. Do not gloss over those seasons of hesitation with fond memories or softened regrets, portraying them as necessary detours on a heroic journey. That is a dangerous lie that could lure you back into the same trap. Do not look back with a nostalgic sigh at the relationships, habits, or comforts God sovereignly rescued you from as if they were harmless chapters in your story. That wasn't genuine love holding you captive. It was bondage cleverly disguised as affection chains, forged in compromise that restricted your freedom and dimmed your light. That wasn't divine alignment guiding your steps. It was sabotage wearing a friendly smile, a counterfeit peace that eroded your purpose, one subtle concession at a time. God, in his fierce love and protective jealousy, pulled you out with mighty intervention before you drowned completely in the depths of what could have been a permanent settling for less than his best. There's a profound reason your dreams now burn with vivid clarity in the quiet hours of the night, why visions that once flickered dimly now blaze with unmistakable direction. There's an undeniable explanation for why your spirit feels remarkably lighter, unburdened, as if heavy chains have fallen away, allowing you to breathe deeply in the fresh wind of the Holy Spirit. That prolonged delay had cast a thick fog over your discernment, clouding your ability to distinguish truth from deception, opportunity from obligation. God's voice from the cacophony of worldly noise. You weren't merely running late on a spiritual schedule. You were being systematically lured into a trap drawn farther from the path of obedience by the enemy's cunning illusions. The adversary's most subtle and devastating tactic is to convince you that waiting is a mark of wisdom, that prudence demands endless preparation, that rushing into obedience might lead to mistakes. But God was never unclear in his instructions. His commands rang out with crystal precision through scripture, through prophetic words, through the inner witness of your spirit. It wasn't genuine confusion paralyzing you. It was rebellion cleverly dressed as caution, a defiant heart hiding behind the facade of careful consideration. Yes, admitting this stings sharply. It pierces the pride and exposes the vulnerability, but you must confront it head-on, for true healing, restoration, and forward momentum always begin with unflinching honesty before God and yourself. You delayed, teetering on the brink of irreversible loss. You almost missed the divine appointment, the sacred convergence of heaven's timing and your willingness. But God, who is endlessly rich in mercy, exquisitely slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love that knows no bounds, stepped in anyway with redemptive power that defied your unworthiness. He didn't abandon you to the consequences of your hesitation. Instead, he extended grace upon grace, pulling you back from the edge and setting your feet on solid ground. And now that you've finally obeyed, surrendering that long-withheld yes, there's an influx of supernatural clarity that illuminates every shadowed corner of your path. There's a profound peace that guards your heart and mind like a sentinel unshaken by external chaos. There's a beautiful alignment where your will syncs perfectly with heaven's purposes, producing fruit that glorifies the Father. But never under any circumstances forget how perilously close you came to forfeiting it, all the promises, the inheritance, the eternal impact that God predestined for your life. Let that near miss serve as a sobering anchor, preventing any future drift. The book of Hebrews, chapter 3, verse 15, issues a timeless warning that echoes through the ages. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. Oh, you heard his voice clearly, repeatedly, insistently through sermons that pierced your soul, through circumstances that aligned too perfectly to be coincidence, through that persistent inner urging that refused to be silenced entirely. You paused, you wavered, you lingered in the doorway of decision, but crucially, you did not harden your heart into permanent resistance. That pivotal distinction is why there's still vibrant hope pulsing through your veins. That's why a holy fire continues to burn fiercely in your spirit, refusing to be extinguished by past failures or present fears. That's why your spiritual eyes remain open, not blinded by bitterness or buried under unbelief. Because even amid the seasons of delay, your heart maintained a tender sensitivity to the Spirit's touch. A responsiveness that God honored and amplified in the moment of your obedience. And now, gloriously, triumphantly now, you are finally in full motion, no longer stalled at the starting line, but accelerating into the destiny God scripted before the foundations of the world. Heaven itself is mobilizing with you angels assigned to your cause, resources, released from storehouses, doors swinging wide in the unseen realm. Every step of obedience propels you forward with increasing momentum, and the entire host of heaven cheers your advance. But I need you to take a bold prophetic action right this instant, something that will etch this commitment into the spiritual atmosphere and declare war on every remnant of hesitation. Type this exact phrase in the comments below without delay. No more waiting. Then immediately follow it with your why. Explain in your own words the personal revelation, the specific area of life where delay has held you captive, the promise you're now claiming through immediate obedience. Because this isn't just a casual comment, it's your line in the sand, a public decree that draws a boundary the enemy cannot cross. This is you openly proclaiming what your spirit has already resolved in private chambers of prayer. You're finished with spiritual hesitation that masquerades as humility. You're done with the emotional limbo of half-hearted commitments. You're through with begging for additional signs when the Word of God has already spoken with final authority, when the cross has already secured your victory. Every time you declare no more waiting, you actively tear down the towering lie that you're not ready, not qualified, not equipped. You demolish the stronghold of overthinking that has paralyzed generations of believers. You silence forever the insidious whisper suggesting you'll obey later when conditions improve or fears subside. No, you'll obey now in this very moment, because delay is decisively done, banished, buried, and forgotten. Type it as a seed of faith planted in fertile spiritual soil destined to yield a harvest of breakthroughs. Type it as an act of raw obedience that honors God's urgency. Type it as a prophetic signpost marking the burial ground of your old procrastinating self and the birthplace of the obedient warrior emerging victorious. This declaration will ripple through the heavens, alerting angelic forces to enforce your resolve and dismantling demonic assignments built on your former indecision. This isn't about reckless rushing into foolishness driven by impulse or pressure. It's about faithful responding to the clear voice of the sovereign Lord, moving with precision when heaven speaks, aligning your actions with divine directives without negotiation or delay. When heaven issues a command, the chosen ones don't debate. They move with holy urgency and unyielding trust. You are not behind schedule, lagging in shame or regret. You are now perfectly synchronized with divine timing, every lost second from seasons of delay being supernaturally restored and multiplied through the power of obedient faith. You are no longer circling the same weary mountain of excuses, frustration, and unfulfilled potential, trapped in a repetitive cycle that drains your joy and dims your vision. You are finally, irrevocably stepping into the vast, promised territory that God has prepared, lands flowing with milk and honey. Assignments brimming with eternal significance, relationships ordained for kingdom advancement, and a legacy that will echo through generations. The wilderness of waiting is behind you. The land of conquest stretches ahead, and with every obedient step you claim more ground for the glory of God. And this time you won't look back. You've always known you were different, even before you had the language to describe it. You could feel it in your bones. You were never like the others. You couldn't blend in. Even when you tried, you noticed things they didn't see. You carried burdens no one handed you. You asked questions no one else dared to voice. From the earliest days, something in you felt like a contradiction, set apart, but surrounded, present, but misunderstood. There were moments you almost convinced yourself that you were just too sensitive, too intense, too deep. But deep down, you knew this wasn't a flaw. It was evidence that heaven had stamped something eternal on your life. The ache you carried wasn't weakness. It was calling. You weren't overly sensitive. You were spiritually tuned. You weren't dramatic. You were discerning. The way you noticed pain, the way you wept over injustice, the way silence sometimes hurt louder than words, these were not accidents. These were signals that you are not of this world. You are marked. You tried to fit into their circles, didn't you? You tried to laugh at what didn't make sense to you. You tried to participate in their patterns, hoping it would mute your difference. But no matter how hard you tried to dim your light, the fire inside you kept flaring up. That fire has always been the sign, the restlessness, the longing, the holy discomfort. It wasn't rebellion. It was rejection of anything less than divine purpose. You watched people succeed at things that failed in your hands. And you asked, "What's wrong with me?" But the truth is, you weren't designed for imitation. You were never created to copy. You are an original blueprint, hand-etched by the Spirit of God. What works for others won't work for you, not because you are cursed, but because you are consecrated. You carry a different rhythm. Your steps are ordered, not improvised. Your battles are heavier, not because you are weak, but because you are carrying a generational assignment. You are not just surviving for yourself. You are walking out deliverance that will touch bloodlines. You are birthing breakthroughs you may never fully benefit from, but your children will. Your children's children will. That's why the enemy worked overtime to confuse your identity. He sent voices to label you early, too much, too weird, too intense. He tried to convince you that something was broken in you when all along it was holiness rising. The world called it awkward. God called it anointing. And deep down you always felt it. You didn't understand it, but you felt it, the weight, the watchfulness, the responsibility, and the warfare followed it. People betrayed you and never explained why. Doors closed for no reason. Circles you were loyal to rejected you for things they never said. But heaven was behind every severing. God didn't allow rejection to break you. He allowed it to protect you. You couldn't be trained in the crowd. You had to learn obedience in isolation. You had to get used to being alone so that when he speaks, you recognize his voice above all others. Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5 declares that, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. And chosen one, you are not difficult. You are distinct. You were never meant to walk the wide road. You were never meant to settle for surface-level religion or watered-down purposes. That's why normal never felt right. That's why shallow conversations drained you. That's why compromising your integrity, even in small ways, felt like dying inside. Because something eternal is written into your DNA. And with that difference comes weight. There is no room for casual compromise. You've noticed it, what they get away with you can't. What doesn't convict them burdens you. What they call freedom you know is a trap. You are wired differently, not because you're better, but because you're called. The truth is, your spirit has always known. Even when your mind was confused, even when your heart was broken, even when your flesh was tired. Something inside of you kept whispering, "This is not your final form. This is not your full name. There's more to you." It wasn't ambition. It was an alignment trying to break through. And now, as you step further into obedience, that difference is becoming clearer. You weren't sent here to entertain darkness. You were born to interrupt it. You weren't placed in this generation by chance. You were sent to shift it. You are the voice that carries weight, the presence that disturbs spirits, the vessel that was set apart for holy use. You've always been different. Now you finally understand why. Chosen one, something sacred just happened when you obeyed. You didn't just step into your destiny. You shattered chains that ran through generations. What stopped your mother, what silenced your father, what tormented your bloodline has now been broken. Why? Because you obeyed when it would have been easier to repeat the pattern. You obeyed when rebellion was more familiar. And that obedience didn't just shift your life. It ended a curse. What you just did in the spirit can't fully be explained in the natural. It didn't come with fireworks. No crowds applauded, but heaven roared. Because that one decision to let go, to walk away, to surrender, was the moment the cycle snapped. God said, "Enough." And your obedience gave him legal access to intervene. You didn't just break habits. You broke covenants, ungodly ones, silent ones, ancient ones, things spoken in darkness that echoed through your family tree. You stood up and said no more. And your obedience did what therapy talent and hard work alone could never do. It cleansed the foundation. Now, things that tormented those before you no longer have authority over you. Nightmares, they couldn't explain addictions. They never conquered. Bitterness, they normalized secret sins that passed from one generation to the next. Your yes to God just interrupted all of it. Some of the warfare you went through wasn't even about you. It was about what you were about to break. That's why the pressure was relentless. That's why the thoughts were so dark. That's why the weight felt unbearable. Because when heaven gets ready to raise up a curse breaker, hell sends its full army. But you outlasted them. You outprayed them. You outed them. Now the future is different. Your children won't inherit what you carried. They won't cry the way you cried. They won't question their identity like you did. You walked through fire so they could walk through doors. You've fasted for freedom they haven't even needed yet. That is the power of obedience. It turns your pain into someone else's peace. You need to realize the ripple effect. You didn't just save yourself. You rescued entire storylines. You turned the page on a history that wanted to write your end before your true beginning. And what's even more miraculous is this God let you do it even when you didn't fully understand what you were breaking. He just needed your yes. Isaiah chapter 58 verse 12 affirms that you will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. And that is who you are now, the repairer, the restorer, the one who rebuilds what generations let fall. And that doesn't just happen by accident. It happens by obedience, painful, sacrificial, uncomfortable obedience. It's important that you don't minimize what just occurred because the enemy wants you to think this is just another phase, just a moment, just a flicker of motivation. But this is a mantle. A spiritual transfer has taken place. You are walking in a new weight of authority, and hell knows it. Don't go back to casual after carrying this kind of fire. Chosen one people will look at you and see transformation, but they'll have no idea what it costs. They won't know the nights you wept without words, the moments you begged God to let you give up the days you felt forgotten. But heaven saw. And that's why favor is now following you. That's why doors will open for you that others have to beg to enter. That's why peace will find you in storms that used to drown you. That's why discernment will sharpen in ways that defy logic. Because obedience always activates anointing. Now, if this word has confirmed what your spirit already knew, if this message has stirred something ancient in your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Someone else is fighting the battle you just won. Someone else is sitting in the same delay you finally broke out of. And your obedience might be the spark that ignites theirs. So share it boldly. Send it to the one who's too quiet lately. Post it for the ones who pretend they're fine. Let this word be the trumpet that awakens sleeping warriors. And if you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed. This isn't about building followers. This is about building up the chosen. Staying connected to the flow of prophetic words like this one isn't entertainment, it's spiritual alignment. Every time you tap into what God is speaking through this stream, your sensitivity grows sharper and your direction becomes clearer. And if the Holy Spirit leads you so into this word, not out of obligation, but out of agreement. When something breaks a chain in your life, you water that ground. Because where breakthrough happens, harvest follows. Support the work that feeds your spirit. It's not about money. It's about multiplication. You've broken the curse. You've rooted the future. You've obeyed your way into a whole new legacy. Don't go silent now. You've stepped into something irreversible. Obedience didn't just change your story. It changed your spiritual address. The moment you said yes from the depths of your soul, heaven moved. And now, something has officially closed a chapter, a cycle, a pattern. What once had access to your spirit no longer holds the key. You didn't just walk out. You walked away sealed. You may not feel different yet. That's normal. The spiritual realm often moves before your emotions catch up, but make no mistake, something irreversible has happened. You are no longer bound to what used to define you, that torment, that temptation, that same old loop. It's over now. Completion has come. That weight you carried, it's not yours anymore. That constant internal storm silenced not because it got easier, but because God declared it finished when you obeyed. And when heaven says finished, no doubt, no delay can reopen what God has shut. There is something sacred about finishing well, not just starting strong, but finishing what God told you to do even when it broke you to do it. And that's what you did. You didn't just feel the conviction, you followed through. You walked the long road of surrender when shortcuts were offered daily. You chose the narrow gate when the wide one was full of friends. And now you're walking in divine completion. Spiritual circles are real invisible loops that trap souls for decades, cycles of chaos, cycles of compromise. Many don't even realize they're in them, but you recognized it and your obedience broke it. No more repeating December disasters. No more summer setbacks. No more emotional resets every January. That cycle is done. The book of Revelation, chapter 21, verse 6 proclaims that it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. That's not just the end of creation's story. It's the divine punctuation over your obedience. God Himself says it is done, not delayed, not postponed, not reconsidered. Done. You need to let that settle deep in your spirit, because the enemy would love to whisper, "Nothing changed." He'll try to drag you back into the mindset of your old self. He'll point out the same temptations. He'll magnify old emotions, but it's just noise static from a frequency you no longer belong to. He has to shout louder now because you're no longer within his reach. The completion you've stepped into is not passive. It's warfare. It means the construction of your soul has reached a phase where God can now build on what you've become, not tear down, not restart, but build. New structure, new assignments, new authority. The foundation is ready. That's why things feel quiet right now. Not because nothing is happening, but because heaven is shifting the blueprint. This is what divine completion feels like, not closure in the world sense, but clearance. The spiritual red tape has been removed. You're now cleared for launch. Chosen one, you have no idea how many people will benefit from the cycle you just ended. The same demons that haunted your family will now find a barrier when they try to move forward. You became a blockade in the spirit. Your surrender has sealed the borders of your lineage. Don't underestimate the gravity of that. Some of you felt this shift in your sleep. The dreams changed. The air in your room felt different. You woke up lighter, clearer. That wasn't your imagination. That was the residue of a war. You didn't even see one that ended in your victory because you obeyed. The curse didn't just break. It expired. Others of you felt it in your body. A chronic weight lifted, an anxiety loosened, a temptation lost its flavor. That's what divine completion looks like. It's not always fireworks. It's subtle, final, and unshakable. But now you must guard what has closed. You cannot flirt with old doors. You cannot scroll through old memories with romantic nostalgia. You cannot entertain what was assigned to destroy you. Completion is not a feeling. It's a position. You are now positioned in a new place. Don't walk backwards trying to find who you used to be. They no longer exist. And I want you to mark this moment not with fanfare, not with applause, but with faith. Comment the number 888 below. Why 888? Because it declares resurrection. It means the old has died and the new has risen. This number is heaven's stamp of a new beginning where the curse is broken, the cycle is finished, and what God starts now cannot be stopped. It's the permission to begin freely, finally, fully. Obedience will cost you more than disobedience ever could, but it will reward you in ways disobedience never will. What you're feeling right now may not be excitement. It may not even be a relief. It might be isolation, separation, silence. Because when God calls someone, He doesn't just pull them out of sin. He pulls them out of system circles and safety nets that no longer serve the purpose. Obedience requires isolation, not punishment, not abandonment, but divine pulling away. And that's where you are now. You're walking in the aftermath of a yes that separated you. You've left the familiar. You've stepped into the unknown. And everything around you feels quieter. Fewer people are reaching out. Conversations feel shallow. Your usual comforts don't work like they used to. That's not rejection, that's refinement. What no one tells you is that when you truly obey God, He doesn't send a crowd. He sends silence. Why? Because what He's doing to you now can't be contaminated by outside commentary. This part of your journey is sacred, and sacred things are hidden while they're forming. Noah didn't build the ark with applause. He built it under ridicule in silence with animals surrounded by confusion and prophetic urgency. But what he was building was about to carry the future. And chosen one, that's you. You're building something that no one around you can fully understand yet. That's why the conversations don't hit the same level. That's why you no longer feel at home in places you used to call safe. This is not loneliness. It's a holy separation. God has to remove the noise before he releases the next instructions. He has to strip you of dependence before he grants you dominion. This is what wilderness obedience looks like. Provision without popularity, guidance without validation. Do not misread this quiet season as abandonment. It's evidence of intimacy. When God is closest, he often says the least, not because he's distant, but because he trusts that you are learning to walk by the last word he gave, not the latest one you want. Silence in this phase is not absence. It's approval. The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 14, verse 23, reveals that after he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone. Oh, even Jesus knew the necessity of isolation before impact. He often withdrew not to escape the world, but to realign with the Father. And if the Son of God needed solitude to stay in sync with heaven, how much more do you? The solitude you're experiencing right now is not a sign that you did something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something right. You're being positioned for something weighty, something that can't be carried by a crowded heart. God is guarding your soil, protecting your focus, filtering your atmosphere, because what he's about to release next requires your full attention. There are no distractions where you are now, just clarity and calling. That's why people have gone quiet. That's why opportunities dried up. It's not delay, it's divine pruning. And pruning always comes before greater growth. You're not hidden because you're unworthy. You're hidden because you're valuable. Rare things are never left exposed. Diamonds are developed in darkness. Oil is pressed in secret. And destiny is formed in silence. Your yes has ushered you into the incubator of heaven. Don't despise it. Let it do its work. Yes, it's tempting to reach back to old places, to reconnect with voices that once filled the silence. But be careful what God is stripping away. Don't rebuild. This season is sacred. The stillness is not accidental. It's surgical. God is removing what can't go with you, what won't support the next level, what looks loyal but carries leeches. The ache of separation is real, but so is the necessity of it. If you're going to walk in the fullness of what's ahead, you can't drag dead weight. And sometimes dead weight looks like good people. Sometimes it sounds like encouragement. Sometimes it feels like comfort. But not all comfort is godly. Some comfort keeps you stagnant. God isn't trying to make you lonely. He's trying to make you holy. This is the cost of elevation. And it's why so few ever make it through this stage. Because isolation offends the ego. It challenges our need for approval. It breaks our addiction to being seen. But only those who survive isolation are trusted with influence. That's why this stage matters more than you realize. So don't run from this quiet. Don't numb it. Don't despise it. Let it make you. Let it break you open so that God can rebuild you with glory. Loneliness is not a sign of abandonment. It's the birthplace of real authority. You are not forgotten. You are being forged. You can't go back now. That's not a threat. It's a confirmation. The old doors are sealed. The familiar paths are blocked. You crossed over, and the bridge behind you burned without your help, not out of cruelty, out of mercy. Because if you had the option to return to who you were, you'd be tempted to in moments of exhaustion, in moments of doubt, in moments when silence feels like punishment and obedience feels like isolation. But God in His wisdom removed the option. You're not in between seasons. You're not in transition. You've already been delivered. What you're experiencing now is the detox, the withdrawal from what once fed your soul but poisoned your spirit. And that process feels like grief, like restlessness, like confusion. But don't mistake it. You're not dying. You're resurrecting. Everything that doesn't belong in your next season is rising to the surface. The thoughts, the habits, the memories. They're surfacing not to shame you, but to be expelled. You're being cleansed, flushed out, purified. That's why the temptation feels louder now. It's not because you're weaker. It's because it's losing its grip. You're in the space between your deliverance and your dominion, and that space is sacred. But it's also dangerous if you romanticize what you walked away from. If you give your mind permission to wander back into Egypt while your feet are already in the wilderness, that's when confusion sets in. That's when obedience feels like exile instead of entrance. The book of Luke, chapter 9, verse 62 speaks plainly. No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God. Looking back isn't just about longing. It's about alignment. Whatever you gaze at, you empower. And if you keep looking backward, even in memory, you risk empowering what God already called dead. You can't go back to the mindset that nearly destroyed you, the way you used to rationalize sin, the way you used to tolerate confusion, the way you used to label compromise as grace. That version of you has expired. It doesn't exist anymore. And if you try to wear that skin again, it'll suffocate you. You've changed even if no one else sees it yet, even if you don't fully understand it. The shift happened in the spirit before it will be seen in the natural world. And the people who once knew your rhythms may no longer recognize your walk. That's okay. They weren't meant to walk this next road with you. You're not hard to love. You're hard to fool now. You're not distant. You're discerning. You're not better than them. You're just not bound like you were. That's what true transformation does. It doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you aware. And that awareness is dangerous to the darkness. That's why the temptation to just go back creeps in when things get quiet. Not because what's behind you has changed, but because what's ahead of you hasn't been fully revealed. And the enemy loves to attack in the mystery. He knows if he can get you to settle in the unknown, he can keep you from the promise. But God didn't deliver you for delay. He delivered you for destiny. He shut doors you didn't have the courage to close. He burned bridges you cried over. He pulled you from people you thought you couldn't live without. And now that you're free, you're being refined. Don't reach for what God already released you from. Don't try to open conversations God has already ended. Don't make nostalgic idols out of toxic seasons. You weren't happy then. You were just numb. You weren't fulfilled. You were distracted. You didn't feel peace. You felt like escaping, and that's why going back isn't an option, not anymore. You've crossed over into something eternal now, not a feeling, a covenant. You said yes to heaven, and all of heaven heard you. The angels were dispatched. The warfare intensified. The atmosphere shifted. This wasn't a suggestion. This was a summons, and you responded. So when you feel the pull to return, remember what it cost you to get here. Every tear, every unanswered question, every lonely night, every cycle broken. It wasn't for nothing. It was for this. For right now. For the version of you that can finally breathe, finally discern, finally walk without apology. No, you're not the same. And no, you can't go back. Even if you tried, the door would reject you. The season wouldn't fit. The grace would lift. What once held you can't hold you now. You didn't just obey. You chose your crown, not the kind made of gold or diamonds, not the kind the world parades or platforms, but the kind forged in the fire of surrender. The kind heaven recognizes, the kind hell fears. Every time you said yes, when everything in you screamed no, that crown was shaped. Every time you chose integrity over convenience, silence over clapping back, worship over worry, that crown was polished. You weren't chasing attention. You were choosing alignment, and now the weight of what you carry demands recognition in the spirit. But don't misunderstand this moment. You're not being crowned because you're perfect. You're being crowned because you're faithful. You didn't do everything right, but you refused to quit. You stumbled, but you kept standing. You wept, but you still worshipped. You delayed, but you didn't deny. That's what makes you undeniably dangerous to the kingdom of darkness, a living threat that hell cannot neutralize or overlook. That's the profound essence of what seals you as truly chosen, set apart, not by human acclaim or fleeting success, but by divine election that echoes through eternity. And in this precise moment, yes, this sacred pivotal instant unfolding right now, as these words resonate in your spirit, you are being powerfully affirmed in the courts of heaven as one who has triumphantly crossed the threshold from mere surviving scraping by in the shadows of past wounds and limitations into reigning with unshakable dominion. Not over people in arrogance or control, but over entrenched patterns of defeat, over lingering trauma that once defined your narrative, over paralyzing fear that whispered lies of inadequacy, over the deceptive comfort of the familiar that kept you chained to mediocrity. You're stepping fully into authority now, and the spiritual atmosphere itself recognizes and responds to it, shifting in submission to the power that radiates from your surrendered life. That's exactly why the warfare has intensified and evolved in recent seasons, morphing from scattered skirmishes to targeted, deeply personal assaults that strike at the core of your identity and purpose. That's why every attack now feels intimately tailored, as if the enemy has studied your vulnerabilities and deployed custom strategies to derail you. Because once you boldly wear the crown of righteousness and victory that heaven has placed upon your head, hell can no longer afford to ignore you or dismiss you as inconsequential. They can't feign indifference or pretend your existence doesn't disrupt their plans. Your very presence has become profoundly disruptive in the unseen realm, not primarily because of the volume of your voice or the eloquence of your words, but because of your transformed posture, the unyielding stance of a conqueror who refuses to bow any longer to the idols, habits, or strongholds that once ruled and oppressed you. Chosen one, this crown you now bear didn't come cheaply or without immense personal cost. It was forged in the fires of sacrifice that few witness or appreciate. People often assume the price was paid in public spectacles, dramatic testimonies on stages, viral moments of breakthrough, or visible triumphs that garner likes and shares. But the truth is far more intimate and profound. It was extracted in the private chambers of your soul. It was in those midnight hours of raw obedience when no one else was watching, when you chose God's will over sleep, comfort, or retaliation. It was in the quiet surrender of your rights, laying down pride and agendas at the foot of the cross without fanfare. It was in the humble apology you offered to those who wounded you deeply, even when they never acknowledged their wrong or uttered a single sorry in return. It was in the radical forgiveness you extended while your heart was still bleeding fresh from betrayal, choosing mercy over bitterness in the solitude of pain. It was in the intercessory prayers you poured out in secret for the very people who hurt you, wounded warriors, crying out for their healing and restoration despite the scars they inflicted. That's the hidden refinery where your crown was truly shaped and bestowed the unseen acts of faithfulness that heaven recorded while earth remained oblivious. The second letter to Timothy, chapter 4, verse 8, offers a glorious promise that resonates deeply with your journey. There is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And chosen one, you are not merely awaiting some distant future reward. You are living in the vibrant foreshadowing of that glorious day right here, right now, in the midst of this earthly life. Heaven is actively marking every instance of your surrender with eternal honor, inscribing your name in the annals of the faithful who chose obedience over convenience. You never chased the allure of a platform, the spotlight of human approval, or the transient thrill of crowds. Instead, you steadfastly carried the cross, the weight of denial, the path of suffering, the call to die daily to self. You didn't seek fleeting attention or validation from man. You pursued the face of God with relentless hunger, seeking His presence in the secret place above all else. And the reward heaven bestows is not the empty echo of applause that fades with the moment. It's authentic, heaven-backed authority that commands respect in the spirit realm and produces lasting fruit in nature. But here's a crucial truth that few believers fully grasp or embrace. Crowns are never mere trophies to display on a shelf for admiration. They are weighty mantles of responsibility that demand stewardship and action. This isn't a passive ornament, it's an active commission, a divine endowment that shifts how you operate in every sphere of life. And that mantle profoundly alters your influence. Your words will now carry exponentially more weight, piercing hearts and shifting atmospheres with prophetic precision. Your silence, when spirit-led, will speak volumes louder than any sermon, conveying depths of wisdom and conviction without utterance. Your everyday life will preach a more powerful message than your most eloquent lips ever could, as your actions become a living epistle read by all who encounter you. You simply can't walk like others anymore, blending into the crowd with casual faith or compromised standards. You can't entertain what the world dismisses as harmless distractions or minor indulgences, for your consecrated calling exposes their true nature as snares. You've been sovereignly set apart for a kingdom impact that ripples far beyond your immediate circle, touching lives, nations, and generations in ways you'll only fully see in eternity. And with that extraordinary impact comes commensurate accountability. Not a burdensome yoke, but a holy alignment that keeps you dependent on grace. Don't shrink back under the perceived pressure of this mantle, allowing doubt to erode your confidence. Don't second-guess the strength God has infused into you through trials and triumphs. The same omnipotent God who crowned you with glory and honor will faithfully keep you, sustaining you through every challenge with His inexhaustible power. He's not demanding flawless perfection from a fallen human vessel. He's calling for steadfast consistency in the midst of imperfection, showing up day after day, obeying promptly even when it costs, praying fervently, even in seasons when heaven feels silent and answers seem delayed. That's the secret to how true kings and queens in the kingdom are sustained, not in the grandeur of the throne room with its visible accolades, but in the intimacy of the secret place where character is forged. Intimacy with God is deepened and authority is renewed daily, through communion and surrender. You're not here by accident. You've been dressed in unseen glory. You're wearing garments no one around you understands yet. And yes, it's heavy, but it fits. You don't have to prove anything. Let the fruit speak. Let the peace you carry be louder than the platform you don't have yet. Let your rest be rebellion against every voice telling you you're not enough. This is more than a breakthrough. This is your crowning moment. You stepped into the fire and came out carrying evidence. You obeyed through betrayal. You kept going through silence. And now you've crossed over from waiting to walking in what was always yours. This is the word I didn't know I needed until now. Chosen one, that moment is here. What you're feeling isn't just emotional resonance. It's spiritual recognition. Heaven has been echoing the same message in your dreams, your silence, your worship, your warfare. And now it's showing up in this very message, not by accident, but by divine arrangement. God saw the battle you fought to stay aligned. He saw the silent obedience. He saw the hours you poured out when no one was clapping, when no one even noticed. And He responds, "This message is more than a video. It's confirmation that your surrender was not in vain. You're not watching this by chance. The Holy Spirit led you here on purpose because you've been needing to hear that you're not making this up. You're not crazy for feeling different. You're not wrong for walking away from what everyone else called normal. Your obedience has opened something. And now what's pouring into your life will not look like anything you've seen before. What comes next is abundance, but not always in the form the world defines it. You're about to walk in clarity, favor, protection, and precision. The kind of clarity that silences confusion, the kind of favor that opens doors before you knock, the kind of protection that covers even what you can't see, the kind of precision that puts you exactly where you're supposed to be, even when it doesn't make sense to others. Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 2 confirms that all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. That's what's happening right now. The blessings are chasing you down, not because you manipulated outcomes, not because you performed, but because you obeyed. You obeyed when it was quiet. You obeyed when it cost you. You obeyed when you were tired. And now heaven is responding. This is the fruit of obedience. Rest, real rest, not just for your body, but for your soul. You're no longer striving to be understood, accepted, or validated. The people who need your voice will find it. The ones assigned to your gift will be drawn to it. The path is being cleared. You don't need to push your way into visibility. God is the one doing the revealing. But chosen one, I need you to remember something. Messages like this don't just show up. They are cultivated in secret places. They come from the depths of surrender, consecration, and obedience. So if this word has pierced your spirit, if it has confirmed what you've been hearing in prayer, don't just scroll by. Share it. Someone else needs the clarity you just received. Someone else is one confirmation away from their obedience. Be the bridge. And if you haven't yet subscribed, not for algorithms, not for hype, but because this stream is a well, and the well isn't empty, there's more coming, more clarity, more prophetic fire, more confirmation. Don't miss it. Stay connected. Your next instruction may already be on the way. And if the Lord leads you so into this moment, not out of guilt, not out of pressure, but out of prophetic alignment, what feeds your spirit deserves honor. When you sow into a word that shifts your atmosphere, you're saying to heaven, I recognize the source. It's not about the amount. It's about the agreement. Let your gift be a prophetic marker. This was the day everything changed. You're not just being stirred emotionally. You're being repositioned spiritually. You feel it, don't you? The old burdens don't weigh the same. The confusion has lost its grip. The fog is clearing. Your discernment is increasing. Your prayers are sharper. Your identity is settling. This is what alignment feels like. It's not hype. It's not temporary. It's transformation. And as you walk forward from this moment, don't forget what God has done in your spirit through this word. Let it be a memorial, a timestamp, a spiritual landmark you never forget. When the enemy tries to whisper doubt again, you'll remember this moment. You'll say, no, I heard him clearly. I obeyed fully. I am completely aligned. The turning point has already happened. You don't need another sign. But above all, walk boldly in what God just confirmed. No more second guessing. No more shrinking. No more replaying old conversations in your head. You are chosen. You are ready. And this word is your confirmation. You may not have seen it yet, but your obedience just unlocked something in the lives of others. That quiet decision you made to say yes when no one else knew the weight of it was not just about you. It never was. Your obedience became a key. And now locks that have stayed sealed in your family for generations are turning. You thought you were just surviving, but heaven saw you interceding. Your faith, tired, bruised, almost silent, still carried enough fire to shake the chains off someone else's destiny. That's how dangerous your surrender is. It liberates more than just you. Obedience is never private. Even when no one sees it, it echoes. God didn't ask you to obey just so your life would change. He asked because someone else's breakthrough was attached to your yes. There are people alive today, people still breathing, still clinging to a thread because you didn't fold. They don't even know it yet. But in the spirit, they are being pulled out of pits they thought would kill them because you chose to say, I will obey. Your yes built a bridge over waters that once drowned your lineage. It gave the next generation a path they don't have to fight for. What you wrestled through, they'll walk over. What tormented you, they'll trample. What was a war for you will be a testimony for them. That's how the kingdom moves, through sacrifice, through surrender, through the obedience of the few for the freedom of the many. You don't need to see the fruit yet to know it's growing. You may not witness every victory birthed by your obedience, but you'll feel the ripple. Suddenly, people in your family will start to ask different questions. They'll break unhealthy cycles. They'll hunger for things they used to mock. That's not random. That's the aftershock of your surrender. And don't think it's just your family. Your yes is opening prison doors for people you've never met, strangers who will one day say, I don't know why, but I suddenly felt hope again. That's not a coincidence. That's your obedience traveling across time, space, and algorithms, reaching the ones heaven marked, but hell almost swallowed. Obedience is never just a moment. It's a movement. And while others chase platforms, God is raising up people like you, quiet, but consistent, unseen, but unstoppable people who don't just speak the word, but live it. People whose lives are altars, whose yes is costly, whose presence disrupts spiritual atmospheres without needing a spotlight. Romans chapter 5 verse 19 affirms this divine pattern, for as through the disobedience of one man, the many were made sinners, so also through the obedience of the one shall the many be made righteous. What one person opens through obedience, multitudes walk through. Just as disobedience can unleash chaos down a generational line, obedience can plant righteousness and stability for those who come after. Your alignment has put an anchor in a bloodline that drifted for too long. You became the turning point. You didn't wait for someone else to rise. You stood up. That's why the attacks felt so personal. The enemy knew you weren't just another believer. You were a breaker, a builder, a bridge. You were the answer to someone else's prayer long before you even knew you were strong enough to stand. And now, heaven is using your yes as strategy. God is weaving your surrender into His plan for cities, families, churches, and movements. You may feel hidden, but your obedience is speaking louder than you know. Don't underestimate the shift that's occurring simply because you didn't quit. Don't minimize the influence of your private devotion in the realm of the Spirit. Obedience is louder than sermons. Your actions when no one is watching are shaking foundations the enemy built to last generations. You've become the intersection between heaven's mercy and earth's desperation. You've become the place where old curses lose power and new covenants begin. And it all started with that simple, painful, holy word, yes. Chosen one, you've done more than survive. You've delivered not with your hands, but with your heart, not through effort, but through obedience. You are a gate now, a divine access point for others to encounter freedom. So when you feel weary, when doubt creeps in, when the cost feels too high, remember this: someone else is breathing easier because you obeyed. Someone else's war ended because you stood firm. Someone else's child is praying tonight because you kept walking. You didn't just say yes for you. You said yes to them. There's a moment when the chapter closes, not because you finished reading, but because heaven turned the page. That's what has just happened in your life. You didn't just walk out of a season, you stepped into finality. Completion didn't come through closure. It came through obedience. And now what was left open in the past has been sealed by the Spirit. The old version of you, hesitant, broken, fearful, double-minded, is no longer in the room. You may still remember their voice. You may still feel their shadow, but spiritually, they are gone. And now the atmosphere around your life is making room for a different sound, a sound of finality, a sound of divine conclusion. No more. No more cycles, no more circling deserts you were never meant to die in. The wilderness is behind you, and the river Jordan has been crossed. But this is not just transition, it's transformation. This isn't the next chapter. This is a whole new book. The book written in heaven, the one no man could open until you obeyed, the one with your assignment etched into its pages. And now, because you chose surrender over survival, it is being read aloud in the Spirit. The enemy is terrified of this moment, because once you step into spiritual completion, you stop asking for confirmation and start walking in commission. You stop begging for signs and start becoming one. That's where you are now. You're not waiting for freedom anymore. You are carrying it. Philippians chapter 1 verse 6 declares that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Completion doesn't mean the battle is over. It means the foundation has been laid. God isn't done with you. He's just done with that version of you, the one that always needed permission to step forward, the one that questioned every instruction, the one that delayed obedience out of fear of failure. That version expired the moment you said yes without conditions. Now the building begins. Now the equipment starts. And what's coming will look nothing like what you left behind. The way you hear will be different. The way you pray will carry more weight. The way you move will echo farther than your feet ever reach. This is what divine completion looks like. Clarity, boldness, peace and power, wrapped in quiet obedience. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. That season is over. The striving, the insecurity, the need for applause, it burned in the fire of surrender. All that's left now is obedience purified, unshakable. There's a silence that comes with real completion, not the silence of absence, but the silence of arrival. You no longer need noise to feel relevant. You no longer crave external signs to affirm internal truth. You're grounded now, rooted unmoved. The winds may blow, but you won't be shaken because your obedience sealed something not just around you, but in you. The gates that once slammed shut in your face are now swinging wide. The spiritual blockages are gone. Your voice carries authority. Your presence stirs conviction. And it's not because you fought harder. It's because you finally obeyed completely. Chosen one, take a breath, a deep one. Feel the shift. This is not imagination. This is not emotion. This is the weight of heaven sitting on your yes. This is the fire of God resting on what He's built inside you. This is what it means to carry completion in your spirit. And I want you to do something prophetic, something that seals this truth not only in your heart, but also in the spirit realm. Comment the number 2, 22 below. Why 222? Because it declares divine establishment. It means heaven has settled it. Your obedience has anchored you. You are no longer wandering. You're being built. 222 means the agreement has been made between God's will, your surrender, and heaven's timing. The cycle is over. The foundation is set. What begins now cannot be shaken. So type it boldly. 2, 2. It's not for attention. It's for alignment. It says, God has established this in me, and I will not return to what I've left. Let it be written in the spirit you didn't just pass through. You've been planted, sealed, and launched. And from this moment forward, every step you take will echo with divine backing. You won't move in circles anymore. You'll move on purpose. The ground beneath you is no longer shifting. It's solid, established, final. Obedience doesn't always feel like victory when you're walking through fire. Sometimes it feels like silence, like confusion, like losing things that mattered. But just because something hurts doesn't mean it's wrong. And just because something costs you doesn't mean it failed. In fact, it's usually the opposite. Real obedience is tested in fire, and chosen one, you passed through it. You obeyed through the loss, through the betrayal, through the unanswered questions. You obeyed when everything in your life screamed for compromise, when comfort offered a shortcut, when bitterness whispered lies that felt easier to believe than the truth. Still you stood. You didn't just endure, you obeyed. And that obedience through the fire is what marked you. You're not just anointed because of what you know, you're anointed because of what you've survived. Your yes has weight now, not because you rehearsed it, but because you lived it. That's what separates the chosen from the called. Many are called. Few say yes in the fire. There's something sacred about obedience that is birthed in pain. It's deeper. It's cleaner. It doesn't need applause because it's already been forged by fire. You no longer need external validation because your confidence is not rooted in the outcome. It's rooted in the one who called you. And now that you've walked through the fire, your authority has shifted. The demons that used to torment you now recognize your voice. The lies that once worked on you now fall flat. The cycles that wrapped around your bloodline for decades now break on contact. Why? Because obedience in the fire doesn't just shape you, it scars hell. Isaiah chapter 43 verse 2 states that when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. It doesn't say you'll avoid the fire. It promises that you'll survive it. And chosen one, you have. That fire may have taken away your plans. It may have taken some people. It may have burned off your false identities, your codependent relationships, your familiar patterns. But it could not take what God placed in you. Your anointing is still intact. Your mantle is still assigned. Your crown still fits. The furnace revealed what was real. All the filters fell off in the flame. The distractions got killed. The masks melted. The fake connections evaporated. And what remained was pure, painfully pure, but unmistakably authentic. And that version of you, the refined one, is who God is trusting with more. You didn't come out of this refined just for yourself. You came out carrying something. Fire doesn't just purify, it prepares. It burns off what's temporary, so only what's eternal remains. And now that you've passed through, you are being positioned not as a survivor, but as a vessel, a voice, a forerunner for others who are still inside their own fire. Because when people see your life now, they won't know the depth of the heat you've endured, but they'll feel the authority. They'll feel the weight in your words. They'll feel the clarity in your counsel, because obedience through fire births legacy, not noise. It's the kind of obedience that leaves a scent of heaven behind when you leave the room. You didn't break. You were broken open. And in that breaking, something holy poured out of you, a depth of worship that doesn't need music, a kind of faith that doesn't need proof, a hunger that can't be satisfied by the world. And now that you've obeyed through the trial, that fire has become your altar. You're no longer afraid of storms. You're no longer shaken by delay. You're no longer seduced by counterfeit comfort, because now your yes is permanent. It wasn't a feeling. It was a covenant. You've tasted surrender, and there's no going back. And let this be clear. God didn't test you to punish you. He allowed the fire to reveal what was already eternal in you. The obedience was yours, but the outcome was His. And now He's trusting you with deeper things, not because you're stronger, but because you're surrendered. People will ask, how did you survive that? And your answer won't be poetic. It'll be prophetic. I obeyed. That's it. No strategy, no shortcut, just raw, painful, fire-tested obedience. So stand tall, not as someone who escaped the fire, but as someone who walked through it and came out crowned. You're not burned, you're branded, and you carry the fire now. That same fire will now ignite others. You're not just marked, you're multiplying holy flame wherever you go. Your name has been spoken in heaven, not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. When you obeyed, something eternal shifted. What was once sealed in mystery was announced in majesty. The throne room acknowledged your surrender. The courts of heaven recorded your obedience. Your name, yes, your name was spoken into the atmosphere of eternity, not in shame, not in judgment, but in honor. It wasn't when you got it all right. It wasn't when you looked perfect on the outside. It was the moment you finally obeyed with your whole heart, that whisper of yes in the middle of your tears, that quiet act of surrender when no one else was watching. That's when heaven stood still. That's when the Lamb pointed and said, "This one marked them, they're mine." And you've been recognized in places your feet have not yet entered. Heaven speaks your name with purpose now, not because you earned a reward, but because you aligned with a mandate. You agreed to carry what others rejected. You agreed to pay a price others avoided. And now your name carries weight in realms you cannot see. The spirit realm knows who you are. Angels know. Hell knows. And most importantly, God knows. You didn't just get heaven's attention. You now walk with heaven's authority. And when your name was spoken, it wasn't just to acknowledge what you've done. It was to assign what comes next. There is a scroll with your name on it. And no, that's not fantasy. That's divine record-keeping. Heaven documents the movements of those who move with God. Your obedience has placed ink to parchment. The instructions are unfolding. The assignment is active. And the timing is now. Malachi chapter 3 verse 16 confirms that then those who feared the Lord spoke to one another, and the Lord listened and heard them. A book of remembrance was written before him for those who feared the Lord and honored his name. And you are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. Your name has been written in the book of remembrance, and because of that, things are beginning to move faster. What used to feel distant is drawing near. What used to take years is now taking weeks. This isn't a coincidence. It's alignment. When heaven speaks your name, everything assigned to you must start moving in your direction, not because of entitlement, but because of timing. Chosen one, you must walk differently now, not in arrogance, but in awareness. You can no longer speak casually about your calling. You can't reduce your assignment to something convenient or ordinary. You are carrying orders from the throne of the Most High, and heaven expects movement. This is why distractions are becoming more obvious, why delays are losing their power, why the same temptations don't have the same pull. You're not being insensitive, you're being calibrated. Heaven is tuning you to a new frequency. Your name has entered the atmosphere of divine command, and now your steps are ordered with precision. You've been trusted with influence that doesn't require visibility. What you're carrying now isn't just for social applause. It's for spiritual impact. And though the crowd may never cheer, all of heaven already has. The moment your name was spoken, angels responded. Assignments shifted. Territory was mapped out. Your yes created a chain reaction in eternity. That's why the warfare intensified. That's why the enemy got louder. He heard your name too, and he knows he's running out of time. You are no longer a threat. You are a weapon, a walking, breathing contradiction to hell's plan, a carrier of glory, a steward of fire. But with that weight comes responsibility. You must protect what you carry. Guard the anointing that cost you everything. Move with reverence, not routine. Speak with discernment, not desperation. You are heaven's vessel now. You no longer live by impulse. You live by instruction. And don't let anyone talk you out of what heaven already spoke over you. If God declared it, no earthly silence can revoke it. If heaven recorded it, no earthly rejection can erase it. Your name is sealed not in ink, in blood. The same blood that redeemed you now backs you. The same voice that called the stars into motion has called you into purpose. You don't need to force the next step. Just follow the one who spoke your name with fire in his eyes and mercy in his heart. And when doubt tries to whisper again, remember this. You didn't imagine it. You didn't earn it. You answered it. And heaven recorded your answer. Chosen one, your name has been spoken in heaven. And nothing will ever be the same. Sometimes we forget that this isn't just a battle over behavior. It's a war over identity. And the moment your name was spoken in heaven, you became more than a believer. You became a threat, a living contradiction to darkness, a signal to the realm of hell that God's agenda has a body, a voice, a vessel. Chosen one, do you realize what your life has become? You're not just surviving anymore. You're advancing. Every breath you take in obedience is ground stolen from the enemy. Every moment you choose surrender over self-clarity, over chaos, worship over worry. You are enforcing heaven's will on earth. You're not passive in this war. You are prophetic proof that light still breaks through, and you can feel it, can't you? The resistance, the shift, the weight of responsibility growing heavier in the quiet places. That's not anxiety. That's capacity expanding. God is increasing your reach. He's enlarging your influence, and He's trusting that your obedience will carry it. But make no mistake, this fire you carry is not just for you, it's for others. Your testimony is oil for someone else's dry season. Your scars are maps for someone else's escape route. Your voice is clarity for someone still wrestling in confusion. You are not just a recipient of revelation. You are now a releaser of it. That's why I'm asking you, don't keep this word to yourself. Like this, if it pierced something deep in you, if it confirmed what God already whispered in the quiet places of your spirit, that simple action helps push this message further into timelines and devices and hearts that are desperate for truth. Share this if you know someone else who's at the edge. Someone one decision away from quitting. Your share might be their saving word. You have no idea how far one act of obedience can ripple. Subscribe if you haven't already. Not for metrics, not for numbers, but because God is building something here, a sanctuary in the digital wilderness. Place where the chosen gather, where the fire stays burning, where confirmation meets obedience over and over again. And yes, if the Spirit leads you, sow into this word, not to buy blessings, not to impress man, but to say, I honor the ground that broke something in me. I agree with heaven's sound. When you sow, you anchor the moment. You respond in faith, and faith always multiplies. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 10 verse 41 says that whoever receives a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. Receiving a word means more than hearing it. It means honoring it, acting on it, letting it change you, letting it build you. And if this word has done that, then let it be more than a feeling. Let it be a turning point. Chosen one, this isn't just motivation, this is movement. Heaven is still watching how you respond, not because you need to earn approval, but because you've been entrusted with responsibility. You're not just carrying a breakthrough. You are stewarding a message, a frequency, a voice in this generation that sounds different, holy, weighty, set apart. And others will follow it. They may not say it out loud, but your obedience is giving them permission to hope again, to dream again, to rise again. And when they do, they'll remember who kept walking when things got quiet. They'll remember who kept burning when others went cold. They'll remember you because you are not just one who was rescued. You are now one who carries rescue. Let that settle in your spirit. You've become what you once needed. You are proof that God still calls nobodies into kingdom warriors, that He still finds the forgotten, that He still turns misfits into messengers, that He still crowns the ones who obey with nothing in their hands but faith. So I urge you, comment below. Let this be your declaration on the earth. Drop a word, a phrase, a symbol that says, I'm still here. I still burn. I still obey. Not for show, but for substance. Let the comments become a wall of fire, intercession typed out in the open. Let hell tremble at the sound of surrendered ones speaking up. You're not alone. Not anymore. The remnant is rising, one voice at a time, one yes at a time. This word isn't the end. It's a spark. And someone else's fire might begin with your next act of obedience. So share it. Speak it, sow into it, and stay ready, because what God is building through the chosen is just getting started. The crown didn't always fit. You tried to wear it too early, and it slipped off. You tried to force it in seasons when you hadn't been processed yet, and it felt heavy, foreign, even suffocating. At times, you questioned if it was meant for you at all. You looked in the mirror and saw someone unqualified, someone overlooked, someone drowning in doubt. But now it fits. Not because the crown changed, but because you did. The you of yesterday couldn't carry what God is placing on your head today. The old version of you would have used the crown for validation. The healed version wears it for service. Before, you would have mistaken the crown as a symbol of pride. Now you understand it's a symbol of responsibility. That's how you know it fits. You've been through the process not just of waiting, but of becoming. The refinement didn't come through applause. It came through silence, through doors that never opened, through prayers that weren't answered how you hoped, through friendships that faded, through identity crises that almost made you walk away. You didn't just endure that fire. You were reshaped in it, and now the crown rests differently. It no longer sits as a question, it sits as a confirmation. You no longer ask, am I chosen? You wake up knowing not with arrogance, but with clarity, because the journey carved something eternal into you. You lost the need to prove yourself somewhere along the road. And that loss was holy, because what God is doing through you now can't survive if you're still living for the approval of people. There's a shift that happens when the crown finally fits not externally, but internally. You stop performing. You stop apologizing for your boldness. You stop negotiating with what once controlled you. You become settled, rooted, commissioned. The first letter of Peter chapter 5 verse 4 reveals that when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that will never fade away. You are not just wearing something symbolic. You're carrying something eternal. The crown you wear is not about earthly reign. It's about heaven's endorsement. It's not about your name being praised. It's about God's purpose being fulfilled. And because of that, you walk differently now. You don't chase platforms. You don't panic in storms. You don't beg for seats at tables God never sent you to. You wait for instruction. You move by the wind of the Spirit. You rest in the knowledge that obedience is your armor and purity is your power. When the crown fits, you realize you're not in competition with anyone. You don't measure your anointing by numbers. You don't rate your worth by reactions. You understand that favor on someone else's life is not a threat to your own. You stop comparing. You start interceding because true royalty doesn't compete. It covers. The weight of the crown has matured you. Now you understand that not every battle requires your sword. Some only require your silence. That sometimes peace is more powerful than proof, that sometimes walking away from the fight isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You've learned that who you are in private matters more than who you appear to be in public. That God doesn't anoint your image, He anoints your inner life. The crown fits now because you stopped trying to earn it. You finally realized you were chosen before you had the credentials. The following, or the strategy that you were called when you were still messy, still wounded, still unsure. But God didn't wait for your perfection. He waited for your surrender. And now the oil is flowing not because of performance, but because of positioning. You've stepped into alignment. You've accepted the cost. You've walked through the fire and let it refine instead of consume. And heaven has responded by crowning what it already confirmed long ago. So when people start to see the shift in you, don't be surprised when they ask, "What changed?" You won't have a formula. You'll just smile and say, "The crown finally fits." You won't need to explain. The fruit will speak. The authority will rest. The presence will linger. Because when the crown fits, the weight of glory follows. You don't need to chase it. It sits on you. You don't need to prove it. It moves through you. You don't need to flaunt it. It's felt. And no matter who didn't see it before, God always did. You are not the same. The crown didn't make you royal. You were royal all along. The process simply prepared you to wear it well. And now that it fits, you will never walk the same again. Glory always follows obedience, but not the kind of glory the world understands, not lights, not crowds, not applause. The glory that follows obedience is quieter, heavier, deeper. It doesn't inflate, it grounds. It doesn't come to entertain, it comes to rest. And now, chosen one, that glory is settling on your life, not as a moment, but as a mantle. You didn't earn it through striving. You accessed it through surrender. You didn't get here because you figured it all out. You got here because you finally laid it all down. That's the paradox of glory. It rests on those who release. There's a presence that follows those who truly obey. You felt it, that quiet stillness in the room after you've said yes. That invisible shift in the atmosphere when you chose holiness over comfort. That clarity that rushes in after you obey without needing all the details. That's what glory feels like, not a shout, but a stillness. And now, glory follows you not just in your prayers, in your posture, in your conversations, in your decisions, in the way you move, in the way you walk away from what used to trap you, in the way you forgive without answers, in the way you show up without needing attention. That is glory in motion. And the best part, you didn't chase it. You became it. Obedience has transformed you into someone heaven can trust, someone who can carry weight without needing credit. Someone who can walk through fire and still radiate light. Someone who can stand alone and still know they are surrounded. That's what happens when glory comes. You become unshakable, not because of who you are, but because of who He is in you. The second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 3, verse 18, confirms that we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into His image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord who is the Spirit. Ever-increasing glory, that means there's more coming. This isn't the end. This is only the beginning of how heaven will reveal itself through your life. You are a carrier now, a resting place for the weight of His presence, not for a moment, but as a way of being. This glory will require you to stay low, because the heavier the presence, the deeper the humility. You're not being raised to elevate yourself. You're being raised to reveal Him. The more He pours out, the more hidden you'll feel, not forgotten, just protected. Because pure glory can't be mishandled. And you've proven you can carry it without corrupting it. You've proven it by staying faithful when nothing made sense, by worshiping when no one watched, by choosing forgiveness when anger would have felt easier, by moving forward without full clarity, just full trust. You proved it when you gave God not your conditions, but your obedience. And now the glory rests not just on what you do, but on who you are. It's in your words. It's in your gaze. It's in your silence. It lingers when you leave. It walks into rooms before you say a word. You don't need to announce yourself anymore. Glory speaks on your behalf. And make no mistake, this glory isn't light. It has weight. And that weight will cost you privacy. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you the freedom to do what everyone else does, because you're not everyone else. You've been set apart. And now you'll be called on, not just by people, but by heaven itself. Your life is no longer yours to manage. It is His to multiply. You are now a vessel of presence, a deliverer of peace, a fire starter in dark rooms. You are evidence that obedience births transformation, that surrender unlocks destiny, that the glory of God still falls on those who fear His name. So don't shrink back. Don't apologize for the weight you carry. Don't explain away the fire burning in your eyes. You paid for this with surrender. You stayed when others fled. You listened when others tuned out. You responded when others rebelled. And heaven marked you. That's why the glory came. That's why it rests. And from this day forward, you will never walk alone again. Not because people will always stand beside you, but because glory goes where you go, not for attention, but for impact. Not to impress, but to set captives free. Not to elevate your name, but to glorify His. You've obeyed. You've endured. You've emerged. And now you carry the glory. Chosen one, if you've made it to this moment, this very line, then hear me clearly. You are not who you were when you began this journey. Something in you has shifted. The fire burns deeper now. The clarity is sharper. The weight on your life feels real. It should, because heaven has confirmed it again and again. You were never random. You were always marked. This wasn't just a message. It was a mantle. And you didn't just receive it. You carried it all the way through. You obeyed. You endured. And now the oil rests. But don't let this be the end. Let it be the beginning of bolder steps, deeper trust, and louder surrender. If something in your spirit was awakened, don't keep it to yourself. Like this, so others know they're not the only ones God is calling higher. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that they're not forgotten, not disqualified, and definitely not alone. Comment below even just one word that captures what this message ignited in you. Let the section become a wall of prophetic agreement where fire meets fire and the chosen find each other. If you haven't already subscribed, not just to stay updated, but to stay aligned. This space is not content, it's a sanctuary, and you belong here. And finally, if you feel led so into this word, not to pay for revelation, but to honor what heaven used to speak to you. Giving isn't about pressure, it's about planting. You sow where you want to grow. You've crossed over now. There's no turning back. You're walking in glory, sealed by obedience and marked by fire. Stay ready, stay yielded. The chosen are rising.